Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour show. I'm really excited to have a friend of mine who is very, very skilled in endurance events joining us today, Kristi Lind, who is coming to talk to us about nutrition strategy for athletic events, endurance events, because she has been doing endurance racing for over 30 years. She has a lot of experience and just recently came back from doing the Antarctic Marathon, which is a dream of mine. So I am very excited to talk to her. And thank you, Kristi, for joining us today.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be here talking to you today. And I mean, Antarctica would not have happened if it wasn't for all the sage wisdom and for the health help that you provided me. You were a reason why I was able to go down there and be successful. So this is just a mutual love fest right here happening.
Absolutely. And it was just fun to watch your journey. And for those who are not familiar with it, Antarctica does actually have a marathon, and you get to trek across the snowy ice for 26.2 miles. And I saw some pictures that were taken of Kristi, and just with the mountains and the snow, it's phenomenal. So it's such a pleasure to have you on and talk about nutrition and your journey with it. So why don't you share, okay? How did you get into all of this?
Yeah, sure. I've been in endurance sports, mostly long distance triathlon and long distance running. In fact, the first road running race I ever did was a marathon. I never started with the 5K. I never started with the 10K. I went straight to the marathon, mostly out of naivety. It's a running race. Cool. That sounds fun. And there was a wonderful training group that started, and it just looked like a social thing to do. I was not a high school runner. I was not a college runner, but it was what I needed at that point in my life, sort of 2 or 3 years out of college, trying to figure out who I was as an adult and sort of dealing with adult things. And running came along at exactly the right time. And that first marathon, I was hooked, absolutely hooked. And from that point on, I've now gone on to do a lot of other crazy stuff, long distance triathlon, ultra distance running. And it has, been a 30-year love affair with endurance racing. It is something I can't imagine my life not having. It's so much a part of me. And I think most people identify me just through that, which is so funny. I don't often identify myself as an athlete, but I think everybody who knows me would qualify me that way first before maybe a lot of other things, which is really funny. So I guess we earn our own nicknames, right? You earn it, and your friends and family tell you the honest truth first. So it all started just from a running group, something that seemed quite social, and it blew up from there. As a long distance runner, I think I spent the first 5 or 6 years a lot of time in the portaloos. Just to be super honest and obvious about it. And it's something I'm sure a lot of new runners fear, like how do you manage that? How do you deal with, calories and using the toilet and all of that? And I was struggling with that, through the first 6-7 years of my running history. And it was really frustrating because you think, gosh, if I spent less time in the portaloos, my finish times would be so much better. And, that just gets to be something you fixate on. And I think that was really what started my interest in, my curiosity. And there's got to be a different way. There's something going on here. And that's how I, stumbled into nutrition. It was just out of a passion to want to fix something for myself. And now I can fix things for myself and for other passionate athletes as well.
That's great. Now, what were some of the changes you felt when you started focusing on nutrition and you started dialing in your nutrition?
Yeah, sure. So the first of which is recovery. And so for a lot of athletes who, they'll do their big block of training and have their long run on a Saturday or on a Sunday. And fundamentally, most athletes just want to hold the couch down afterwards. And the first thing I noticed afterwards is like, wow, I come home, I have a proper meal and I recover, using the right mix of nutrients, and my energy level is high. It hasn't waned. I don't feel like I need to lay down. I don't feel like I have to take a nap. And so I know that is something that I noticed first and foremost in myself, which also means then that you get up on Sunday and you can train a little bit harder, train a little bit faster. And I think that was probably one of the first signs. And I can tell you that a lot of the athletes I've worked with, that is where they notice it as well, is that, wow, I'm not as achy and I have a lot more energy after I do, my big training blocks. And that's great. It's you listening to your body, and our bodies are always giving us clues, telling us what's going on. And a lot of times we don't listen. And I think that's one of the most important things in working with a nutritionist, is having that person help guide you towards that connectivity back to your body. And I know that's something you really believe in. It's, how you successfully manage your clients as well and help people feel better, is just listening, getting to listen to your body. And it's the same thing, I think, in nutrition strategies. So so energy level, I think, is just one of the first things that I really noticed in myself.
That's incredible. And I really think that when I was doing marathon running or ultras, the ability to pay attention to nutrition and hydration actually led me to develop what I do now with people, because I became so hyper aware. So it's great to hear you say that, and helping people to be able to sense, okay, what is your nutrition status while you're in the middle of an event? Now, also, we know hydration is important. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm curious, when you first started running for those first several years, did you realize the importance of hydration, or did that come later when you studied nutrition?
Yeah, no, it definitely came later after I started studying nutrition. All the mistakes, right? Most of us learn from our mistakes. Took me a little bit longer. It might have been a little bit of a slow learn on that, because we're also very fixated. I think most of us athletes, us little type A athletes, get very fixated in our ways about something, not so much for luck, like a lucky charm, but more just, it worked for me before. I don't want to change anything. I don't want to take that chance, that I do something different. But that's definitely how we learn. I would do an entire marathon on about 30 ounces of water, and then wonder why I would end up throwing up at the end of every marathon. Okay, that's a problem, right? Because fundamentally, for hydration, and look, there's a very basic formula, and then you make some adjustments for health state, for weather, for duration. It's about 1 liter of water an hour. And for those of us who are out on a course for a little bit longer, for some of us, that means quite a bit to keep up with. If you have not kept up on your hydration, you can only go about 2 hours of intense racing before your body will start to bark back at you. You will start to get a lot of signals, most often by way of the salty rings that you start to see on people, shows up on the shirts and on their face. They just haven't kept up, and you can't come back from that. It is impossible for any athlete, regardless of the duration of the event, to come back from a hydration deficit if they haven't kept up with it after 2 hours of racing. You just won't. It's that simple. And I kind of like to be dramatic about that, because you have to scare people a little bit to get them to really, take it seriously and have a strategy for it. So definitely the most important thing that you can do, whether you're racing, 26 miles or 126 miles, or you need to pay attention and not fall behind on your hydration strategy.
And when you talk about 1 liter per hour, do you have any wiggle room for based on body size or weight as well? Is that part of one of the factors you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, 120-pound woman, she's obviously going to need a little bit less than a 220-pound, 6'4", gentleman. Obviously, there are some of those variants. One of the common mistakes I see too in athletes is not adjusting for climate, not adjusting for altitude, not adjusting for weather. All of those things need to come into your formula, your own personal formula. If you're racing at altitudes, you're going to need more water. That's it. That dryness will put us into a dehydrated state faster than at sea level. Same thing with colder temperatures. Often your race, it's cold and you don't drink and you're going to fall behind so quickly. One of the things that goes hand in hand with the hydration is water is great, but I think keeping up on your electrolytes in some format is also really mission critical. And I think especially as we're talking about the conditions, whether it's weather or whether it's altitude, is the importance of having electrolytes factor into your strategy, your hydration strategy in some way. And it's never been easier to make sure that you get that and you stay up on it. And it'll also help you stay hydrated longer. So those of you athletes who are out there for, 100-mile or 100K, it's critical. It's really critical that you have an electrolyte strategy.
And I can say that definitely does make a difference. I ran San Diego once, and somewhere around mile 12, I decided to take one of the salt packets and I dumped it in my mouth, which was a bad idea. I finished, but ended up in the medical tent and there were a lot of problems. So I can definitely attest to the electrolyte strategy and figuring it out before the race and not experimenting in the middle of a race, because that doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, it does. One of the things I'd love to share, besides just seeing like those salty rings that are on people's faces or on their shirts, in those places where you sweat. Another thing that you can see where you can tell if an athlete is falling behind on their hydration and on their electrolytes is a really distended stomach. If it's sitting way out here, then that's a really clear indicator that they've fallen behind on their hydration and on their electrolytes. And I saw that a lot when I was racing Ironman and long distance triathlon. By the time you got to the run portion of it, you could really see people, with their bellies out to here, and it's definitely a symptom of not having enough electrolytes to help you hold that water in. So, yeah,
important. It's important. So when you're looking at electrolytes, what are some of the strategies people can use just in a general sense? Do you like goos? Do you like salt packets, but don't do what I did? Do you have other solutions?
Sure. I mean, like I said, I'm just so impressed with the progress in sports nutrition these days. It is miles apart from where it was 30 years ago when I started. I swear, I think my first pair of running shorts were for men. I don't even know if they made women's running shorts, and God forbid our uteruses might fall out if we were out there running, right? So so I'm so impressed with the how far that the science side has taken it, because it's really simple. Whether you choose to have a salt tab, very simple salt tab, whether it's in your hydration product, like a noon tablet that you have with your water. The most important part to have is a balance of sodium, calcium, and magnesium. That's what you want to look for. So whatever product suits you best. If you like to chew on something, if you want it in your goo, if you want to use a chewy tablet, all of those are great. Just be sure that you read the back of the labels. Label reading is really important, and make sure that those three are in there. And they're sort of in a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 relationship with each other across the board. So that would be good. And
I would imagine too, you recommend practicing ahead of the race so you kind of get an idea.
Definitely. This is one of the common mistakes I would say I hear, is that a lot of certainly a lot of clients that I've helped with their nutrition strategies is that Their starting point is usually, oh, somebody told me to do that, or my friend does that, or I was riding in a cycling group and they all do this. And I hear that a lot. And I would encourage everybody to think that you are an individual and your body is going to react differently to your friend, your training partner, your cycling group, your running club. Everybody is an individual, and fundamentally what works for somebody does not mean it's going to work for you. And you have to experiment with these things in advance. I would say that in order to have a successful nutrition strategy in a race, we need to be practicing with it at least 4 weeks. I dare say that's the worst thing, but I'd rather have it last for your entire training window so that we can get all the kinks out ahead of time. That allows you to try it on different conditions, different courses, different training areas. And all of that is just confidence. The thing that I think a lot of athletes miss is a confidence in their nutrition strategy at the time that they hit the starting line. And one of the success measures I use with my clients is, let's build a box. We're going to build a box. We're going to build that box out ahead of time. We're going to make index cards. We're going to have aid stations all laid out into little baggies, because by the time you get to race day, we're all frantic. You didn't sleep, you didn't have a coffee maker in your hotel room. Maybe there's rain, you can't find parking. There's 100 other things that's going to occupy your mind space. And I'd love my athletes to show up saying, I got this. My nutritionist figured it out. I don't have to worry about this one thing because I have other things to worry about. And, that to me is really important to build into the nutrition practice as I work with the client, is getting them ready all the way through, the portability of it, sending it ahead of time, etc. So that's another tip I would give to people, is put it in a box, get it ready, so it's something you don't have to think about on race day, because then it's kind of too late.
Absolutely. Now, when you're talking about kind of having prepared nutrition or your supplements and all that, do you have your clients do that for a road marathon where there's aid stations usually every 2 to 3 miles, and they have some of those items, versus for an ultra marathon, for those who aren't familiar with ultras, greater than a 26.2 mile race, where aid stations are 5 to 10 miles apart, and you have to provide more of your own nutrition. Usually you're wearing a hydration vest where you can shove things in the vest. So how do you address both of those situations?
Sure. I think it's important to understand what's available to you on the course. So one of the first things after, deciding what t-shirt size you're going to get when you sign up for your race is just determining, like you just said, how close or how far are each aid stations, and what are the aid stations going to have. If you are running a very large marathon, like a Boston Marathon, a New York Marathon, where there's 50,000 runners, you can rest assured that there's going to be a decent supply, even if you're a back of the pack runner. By the time you hit mile 24 and 25, they will do a really good job of making sure that all the athletes have what they need out there. If you were doing a smaller race, I will tell you that chances are things are not going to be there at the time that you get there if you are a mid or a back to the pack. And it's better just to, again, feel confident that you have what you need on you to get you through the race. And so I'm a big proponent of not relying too much on the aid stations and actually carrying it on your person. Again, it really depends on the type of event that you are doing. But I think, again, if I can give you one less stressor, then it will make your success in following a nutrition strategy that much easier, right? You'll be more likely to succeed. Ultra distance racing, they tend to have a buffet line of things that are available. And there's definitely things that are on the better end of the spectrum, and then things that are on the not so good end of the spectrum. And so I definitely would encourage athletes, and I will always produce for those that I've trained through ultra distant racings, like, here's your no, don't touch these, at least not until you get to the last 3 or 4 miles, right? And those things that, if they're there, please indulge. One of those items would be anything that is like a fruit, whether it's sliced apples or oranges, and this goes for road racing as well. One of the secret training strategies or racing strategies would be that any of those fruits will have a fruit acid in it. That fruit acid will help minimize your lactic acid buildup, which is really fantastic. So you will not feel as sore as fast as you might if you don't. And so I would really encourage athletes to reach for the fruit while they're out there. That will really help and make a difference, especially the longer that you're out there.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was going to ask you about that. I have a really quick funny story regarding orange slices. I was running a marathon in Arizona, and one of my client patients at the time wanted to come cheer me on because I was running by his house. An older gentleman, he asked me, "What do you like during a race?"
Yeah.
And I just said, "Well, I usually get orange slices if they have them at the aid station." So when he saw me, he had a full Ziploc bag of orange slices that he threw at me. I'm trying to run as fast as I can, holding this bag of orange slices. I did donate it to other people.
That's so nice. Yes, share, make friends.
I can't hold it that long. It was a big bag and heavy, but
he's sweet. That's very thoughtful of him.
Very, very sweet. I was very grateful. So what are some of the foods that you would say, stay away from?
Yeah, look, and this is going to be regardless of the type of race that you do, even those of you who are cyclists who might be out on just a long century ride. Anything that is a candy, would you find it in a Halloween container, then you probably don't want to eat that. And the reason why I say this is that that processed sugar really irritates your gut, especially if you start to fall behind on your hydration strategy. It is probably the fastest way to shut down your ability to absorb water, is to start to get all that inflammation happening there, because you've had too much refined sugar that you've just dumped in there. You process things really fast when you're moving, and especially if you're running at a calorie deficit. Your body, your metabolism is going to be really dialed up, and that's going to drop into your stomach. And it has I've watched many an athlete go down because they've been eating, candy and licorice and cookies or whatever it is at the aid stations, thinking I just need calories. And it's like sabotaging your race in doing that. So I would stay away from things that are the refined sugars. Again, I like the reference of, do you see it at Halloween? Because then you probably don't want to, you probably want to stay away from it in racing.
And it's interesting because a lot of people will do races or athletic events thinking, woohoo, I can now go and do whatever I want and eat whatever I want. And it's like, no,
I see this all the time. There is such a, first of all, our relationship with food is incredibly emotional. It doesn't matter if it's, someone who's an athlete and racing, that relationship, like you just said, that sense of reward, that exists for all of us, whether we've had a hard work day and, or your kids just had a great soccer match, you find yourself at the yogurt shop, whatever it is. And food is so attached to our emotions, and, that's just part of our culture. And we all have beautiful memories of whether it's Thanksgiving or, a piano recital where your parents took you out for ice cream afterwards. Like, that pattern of emotion has been with us from the beginning, and it just builds over time. And it's one of the things that I work on with my clients, whether, again, it's through the lens of endurance racing or training, or whether it's, for weight loss or health management, is really trying to understand their connection, their emotional relationship with food. But I see this with athletes all the time. And I know I've been a victim of it myself, where I have had a big training block and decided I can eat an entire cheese pizza. You can't really do that. It doesn't feel very well. maybe you can do it once. I'll be honest. You can do it once. You can get away with it once. But the more you do that, the more you are reinforcing a pattern that you really don't want to reinforce. And ultimately, that will catch up with you. You'll start to fall behind on your recovery. You're not making the right decisions to give your body what it needs to help. Help you recover from, all the little micro tears and the damage that we do during our training that allow us to get back out there and feel good. The other thing that I will say is, and this kind of goes back to the idea of deserving a reward, is that fuel is needed for our brains. And the longer you race, or, especially if you are new in endurance sports, it's a very, you are using a lot of mental energy. And so I would say that it's really important to not forget that you are also fueling to keep your head in the game. The longer you are out there, or as you start to maybe feel like you are suffering, or that, little voice in the back of your head is saying, I don't want to be out here anymore, I'm uncomfortable, whatever it is, you can use sound nutrition strategies to really change that talk, really change that self-talk and that talk track. And it's all about fueling your brain. And I think one of the things I see very often with female athletes is their aversion to fat and wanting to have, any kind of fat in their diet. And that is problematic. It's problematic on race day because our brains need fat to function. And when we don't have that, you might start to check out mentally from a race sooner than later. And then, of course, there's the outside of racing or sports impact that not having enough fat in our diet will have. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I want to cover a couple more points kind of related to that.
Yeah.
But first, what do you tell people then? We've kind of talked about during the race.
Yeah.
But what about recovery right afterwards? Do you have specific guidelines that you would say a well-balanced meal? And what does well-balanced mean? Because it means a lot to different people.
It's so true. It's so true. So let me talk about macronutrients for a second. The US government publishes the USDA guidelines, and those guidelines are based on mostly political decisions that are made over time, very much influenced by some of the lobbyists and politicians, farmers, etc. And so there's not a real strong connection between what is published as a USDA guideline and what you really need. So I want to level set that first. And it's fundamentally one of the biggest differences between dietitians and nutritionists. Nutritionists don't have to follow a USDA guideline, which is pretty fascinating. And that was really important to me as I was making my decision about how I wanted to learn and help, is through a lens of a very holistic, as opposed to having to follow a guideline. So I'll start there. Macronutrients are essentially your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fat. You need all three. You need all three in different proportions based on what it is that you are doing. Someone who is sedentary needs something different than someone who is someone who's training 24 hours a week or 10 hours a week. So I will also say that this is one of those areas where, especially over the last 10 years, there's been an awful lot of misinformation and certainly a lot of fads and trends. And if I can give anyone listening to this a piece of advice, is trends are exactly that. They're here now and then they'll be gone later. And it's usually based on a single data point, as opposed to data generated over a longer period of time, etc. And there's nothing more personal than your own nutrition strategy, which is what I said at the beginning. So I'll take a deep breath. That's a lot for those of you who are not as geeky about me as me on all of these issues. But that's what macronutrients is. To answer your question very specifically, immediately following a big training block, within 45 minutes, I encourage all of my athletes to get a mix of carbs and protein into their body straight away. And I look for almost a 50-50. That's really important as a follow-up. within 2 hours of a big training block or even a race, a proper meal. And a proper meal is going to look very balanced, where it's probably a 30-30-30. There's always been an emphasis in endurance racing to go deep on carbs. That will probably not feel very good, probably make your stomach not feel very good, and you're not going to get the recovery that you need. You're going to need protein to help mend all those micro tears that end up happening from our training. And that's where you need a complete amino acid profile. I won't go any deeper on that. I could talk about this stuff all night long because I'm just, like I said, a geek about all of it. All of our food has some sense of, or some combination of amino acids in it. The more complete profile you can get, the better your recovery will be for all of your body functions. And that's such sound advice for after a big training block or after a race.
Yeah.
So.
That's great. And that can be accomplished. I know there are vegan, vegetarian athletes out there.
Sure.
I'm vegan, so I've experienced this as well, but some people are vegetarian, some people are not.
Yeah.
But this can be accomplished no matter what diet you're following, correct?
Absolutely. 100%. There are plenty of sound protein choices for those of you who want to use vegetable protein. There's such a again, going back to just the options that are available to us now that weren't available some time back. I was a vegetarian for 25 years back in the 80s, and that now I've dated myself and I'm older than and probably most of the people listening to this. But I can tell you it looked very different. Your options were very, very different. And it was definitely, there's definitely more of a stigma than there is now. But the fact that there are so many people who are electing to use vegetable-based proteins or have a vegetable-based diet has just meant that you can get what you need from, vegetable sources pretty much all year round. And I think that's really important because produce is seasonal in a lot of places in the country, but at this point, again, just because of how we've progressed in our ability to source things, you can get vegetable proteins year round now, and that's fantastic.
That's great. Can you touch just a little bit on protein a little bit more, in the sense that I'll often hear certain people who say, I can't do any activity unless I have to fuel up only on protein.
Yeah.
And they become very dominant that they need to have protein, and kind of in disregard for fats and carbs. And so I'm just curious, kind of your thoughts on that. And just what do you feel?
Sure. I know there's diet fads, right? And there are a few right now that I think really are pushing towards a high protein diet. And I would say that endurance athletes do need more protein than those who are sedentary, again, just based on what we were just talking about, the muscle repair. Do you need 250 grams? And do you need that every single day? The answer is no, you don't. Unless you're like a bodybuilder, I can't see a reason why that would matter. In fact, what ends up happening is when you become very protein dominant, you end up actually sort of starving out some of the other nutrients that you really need, like complex carbohydrates and fats. I know we just talked about women and fat. It's really important, but I also would say, and I would say this whether it's for athletes or whether it's non-athletes alike, most people don't eat enough vegetables. Just do not eat enough vegetables, and vegetables are carbs. And it's if I could get everybody to just pay attention that every meal, at least half your plate, is full of color and is full of vegetables, you are going to feel so much better, and your body's going to thank you for it. So, so that's what I see in the really high protein diets, is that they tend to starve out some of the other things like complex carbohydrates, like vegetables, which are really, really important.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad we touched on that. And then I do want to touch on caffeine because
Sure.
some people use it to get through their
Oh,
day.
yes.
And they need it and they won't survive without it. And then sometimes you can use it in racing as well to
Sure.
keep you going. So kind of what are your thoughts on it in terms of using it for energy, how it affects healing, all of that?
Yeah, you bet. You bet. It's such a good topic. And I literally just had a client last week called me and he said, okay, but now which energy drink can I have? We're getting him ready for a 100K race. And I said, none. Did you see it in your program? No, you don't get to have any of those. But his reference point is exactly what you're saying. They become really popular. And in many cases, it's on the race course at aid station as something that's available to you are these energy drinks. And you reference caffeine, but those energy drinks have a whole lot of other stuff in it besides caffeine, which also causes a chemical reaction inside of your body. And in most cases, your body is not used to that. And so I would say that's another one of those places where it could sabotage your race to try something like that. But back to what you asked me on. If you are doing a marathon, I don't see where there is a need for caffeine inside of your racing. Where I do see the benefits of caffeine is for, those athletes who are doing maybe a 100-mile race, who are going to be out there for maybe longer than 8 to 10 hours. Then I can see where there is a real need for it. Most of the sports nutrition products out there that have caffeine in it have about 30 grams, which is equivalent to about a cup of coffee. My recommendation is to look for things that are closer to about 15, so you don't get the highs and the lows. You want to try and prevent the highs and lows from happening. And one of the better sources for caffeine for those athletes who are racing those longer distances is to look for things that have green tea in it. Green tea is one of those beautiful, or even just drink green tea. I mean, just, have a matcha or a green tea product. It does not bring you up and drop you back down like coffee does. That the way it's metabolized is very different. And so you will hum at a lower pace for a longer period of time. And so that is definitely one of the things I use personally myself, is to look for green tea. You can even get green tea in a tablet now, which is pretty fantastic. Side of pilots and maybe race, I don't know who else would need this, but it is available to you, everybody, which is pretty fantastic. But it's very common, before we move off of caffeine, for people to want to take a cola drink, like a Coke, when they're racing. And again, it's one of those things where it'll probably make you feel good for about 15 minutes and then it will not, mostly because it drops you back down. And so in the advice that I give to athletes who are out doing something that is long distance, I would recommend that you save a cola for like your last hour as a bit of your reward and something that you look forward to that will get you through the finish line, without potentially sabotaging the rest of your race. You don't want to do it at mile 50 of a 100-mile race, chug 2 cans down, and next thing you know, you're throwing it all up on the side and you've just lost your race day. So I hope that answers your question about caffeine. It's everywhere, and it's something we should be careful of. I know I work with a couple young athletes on club level volleyball and club level soccer, and I'm shocked that it shows up in like what they do and what's there for their tournaments, that 12 and 14-year-old kids are having caffeine and sports drinks to help them get through these games. So I kind of feel a personal mission to want to change that and make an impact, because it really screws up your thyroid.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you're working with some young ones to help with that, because you see it in the gel packs all the time. If you're doing a race and they're offering the gel packs, you have to ask for non-caffeinated or know which flavor has no caffeine and ask for vanilla, no caffeine. because it is everywhere.
It's everywhere. That's why I say read your labels and bring your own stuff. If you have to rely on it, and I mean, I've witnessed this happen myself and in other athletes. Maybe you dropped a gel and you grab one off the table and it has caffeine and you're not used to using caffeine, and within 20 minutes you're in a portaloo because that's had an adverse reaction on your body function, and you just lost your PR that you had worked 18 miles and so hard for, to get to that place. So
That's crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And one other topic I think would be great just to touch on too is one of the first questions is, what supplements should I take?
Oh yeah. Oh, I get this a lot. It usually comes by way of, salt and electrolytes, which we already talked about. The next most common place that I get asked is in protein powders or recovery drinks. I mean, every one of the big sports brands has one, has some sort of recovery drink. I encourage everybody to read the label. A lot of them have something that sounds like a dye or a red or a number. If it has a number on there, do not drink it. It's probably not digestible. And unfortunately, a lot of recovery drinks or even protein powders, they all have some sort of a dye on it. Whether you choose to use a vegan, like a pea protein, or whether you choose to use a whey, the ingredients should not have more than 3 or 4 listed on it. If it has more than 3 or 4, do not buy it. There's plenty out there. Even Amazon has some of the high quality, again, whether you want a vegan one or you want an animal-based protein. I use protein powders for my own recovery. I think it's a good way to manage, especially in our busy lifestyles. If you just need something quickly. So I would encourage athletes to have one. And again, just look for the 3 to 4 ingredients, regardless of whether you use a vegan or not. The other common supplement I get asked a lot about, and this is for all my guy athletes out there especially, is the role of BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, and do I need those or do I not need those, and should I be taking a lot of them? Because let's face it, a lot of us athletes are also vain. So there's a lot of like, well, am I going to bulk up? I don't want to bulk up. Doing this to be thin and sexy, whatever it is. And so that's why I think branched chain amino acids come up a lot. And I would tell you that most of us don't need a branched chain amino as a recovery. I am a big fan of microdosing amino acids, but usually I will be able to tell from feedback from an athlete what they need most. Maybe they need leucine, maybe they need glutamine, and a branched chain amino acid isn't really going to be that helpful if there is just one that it sounds like you are really missing. It is one thing that I will say for most of those vegan athletes out there is that a glutamine supplement is almost always in my practice for those athletes who are choosing to be meat-free. That is a very common prescription for me, is to make sure that they're on a glutamine amino acid. And so that's a very common, that the idea of branched chain amino, fine, but are you getting any real benefit? Probably not. If you can just work with a nutritionist, feedback and the role of feedback is really important. And from there, we can determine a lot of what you may need on an individual basis. The one thing I will say is that your eyes and how your eyes and your mouth, this is where you start to see what's happening nutritionally with your body. And so this is one of those areas that I ask athletes or clients to always give me feedback on. How's your vision? How does it feel when you're sleeping? Are your eyes busy? Are they not? What about your mouth? What does that feel like? And there's a little bit of Eastern medicine incorporated into that, or Eastern medicine philosophy in it. But it's such a quick indicator of understanding what's happening in the rest of your body. So I would encourage everybody, if you're noticing any vision changes or, any differences in, taste in your mouth, that we can use that to diagnose a lot of things that can be managed through nutrition strategies.
That's really interesting. And just real quick, you had mentioned doing microdosing of amino acids. For those who are not familiar, can you just explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. This is where I'll try not to geek out because, again, if you were to ask the Google or whatever chatbot you're using these days, anything about amino acids, you're going to get an awful lot of science. So I'll try and keep it at like a second grade level right now. But amino acids are the building blocks for every function that we have in our body. So whether it's to blink, to sneeze, to cough, to digest, there is some combination of amino acids that's required to make that action or transaction happen inside of our body. Fundamentally, there are only 9 essential amino acids, meaning we have to have them every single day from the food that we eat. It's from those 9 that your body builds the individual combinations to do exactly what I just said, whether it's sneeze, to digest, to sleep, to blink, whatever it is. Oftentimes in our busy stress lives, whether it's stress from training or it's just environmental stress from a difficult adult life, we can run a little short on some of those amino acids. And then what happens is you start to see less functionality in your body, however that is. And by listening to what clients say, I can help make nutritional diagnosis on what might be missing in your diet, or if one keeps a food diary for a bit, and I can interpret where there are some gaps and where some areas that we might need to add a microdose of an amino acid. The ones that you hear a lot about are the creatinine, for all again, those male athletes out there, the ones that sort of build up your muscles. Glutamine is a really important one. So I'm a big fan of using that to help improve one's health state, whether you're a racing athlete or not. And it's another reason why you may not want to have a branch chain amino supplement, and focus on maybe just a couple of the places that you may have gaps. I can tell you a personal story. When I went from being a vegetarian back to introducing meat into my diet, the nutritionist who I worked with at this time, my glutamine levels after she had ran some panels was at 0. And that was something that happened over time. Just the beating I was giving my body, and just not keeping up on sound nutrition overall. And so it took about 2.5 years of supplementing with just glutamine. And I did it intravenously and powders, to get myself back into a place where it was, my body was able to manage it through the food that I was eating. So just a personal experience, and why I can firsthand experience state how valuable it can be to really look at this on an individual basis. And again, that feedback loop is so important, whether it's me or any other nutritionist or nutrition science person helping somebody with living a healthy life.
Yeah. And I'm curious, could you feel a physical difference going from no glutamine to at an appropriate level? Do you remember if there was something that happened that you could feel?
Yeah, it really showed up in my sleep. That's where I was noticing it. I was a very fitful sleeper during that time, and I would before I started the supplementing, and I attributed it to my crazy lifestyle, just a hectic lifestyle, training 20 hours a week, blah, 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 and not really paying attention. And it was through, again, this very curious nutritionist just really asking me a lot of questions. And when we started doing that, within, probably 3 weeks of being on the supplementation is when I started feeling like I could sleep more soundly and I wasn't as fitful. And it was really through the sleep that I could feel a difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to know, just, and it might be a different response for everyone, but it's still
Of
good to
course.
see kind of what was your body's experience when you got to the right level of glutamine. So
Absolutely,
that's great.
absolutely. And
Wow.
I would say that, guys, everybody out there, if you are falling behind in your nutrition strategy, your chances are your body is sending you a clue in some way. And just, take a moment and try and find that awareness inside yourself. We all have moments of we're maybe not doing all the right things, and if you just stop and listen to your body, it's going to tell you that something's amiss, and you can deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel this desire to share for all of the athletes listening?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Gosh, I think I think we covered off on
Okay.
on just about everything. I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a personal journey for everybody. And I definitely would encourage everybody to, sit with a nutritionist and learn a little bit about it. These are beautiful habits that help you not just in your racing, in it helps you with longevity. It helps you with staying healthy. And I think we all want to be doing the things that make us happy, whether it's running on the trails or, going out for long bike rides with our friends, for as long as possible. And a lot of that has to do with making good decisions now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how can people reach you who
Yeah.
want to work with you? Most important.
Yeah, that's so great. Everybody can reach me at my email address. It's
Mhm.
kristilind@mac.com. It's KRISTILIND@MAC.com. I work with a variety of clients. I'd say a lot of my clients are athletes of some sort, but not exclusively. I've definitely helped people, whether it's weight loss or thyroid issues or menopause or whatever it is. But I'm very responsive, and I'm so passionate about this, and I just get so much joy from seeing positive change in these beautiful shiny clients that I work with, that I get the opportunity to work with.
That's wonderful. And what's great is you have this huge experience in the sports athleticism world. So you get it. You've made the mistakes. You
I
understand.
have.
You've learned. So the whole key is let's try not to have those same mistakes
That's
happen
right.
for other people.
Let me save you
Yes.
all those trips to the
Yeah.
Portaloo. Just
Yes.
one phone call.
Yes. Absolutely. This is
That's
wonderful.
exactly right. This has been
Yeah.
awesome, Amy. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for talking to me today. I just am
Same.
so happy to be a part of your world, and so happy you're in my world. So
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you and your time, and thank you for sharing, because I know you'll be a valuable resource to my listeners. And please check out Kristi, take advantage of talking to her, start working with her to help you on your journey. So thank you so much.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your weekend. We will see you again next week. Bye now.